Okay, well, hi, everybody. Welcome to CoreLight's Spiritual Weather Report for November 2020. And this is Brad, and Leslie is here with me. We're in South Africa. And wow, what a time we're in. There's so much to talk about, and I'm really delighted to be with you. We both are. And we missed you last month. We taught a course in October. Excuse me, it was called The New Paradigm of the Heart, Transcending the Victim-Tyrant Consciousness, which I'm sure many of you know about, and I know a lot of you were there with us. So still, we missed I love, Leslie and I both love these monthly calls, and so it was, we were sorry to miss the usual monthly call, but we're happy to be with you today. And we're excited about today. Excuse me. It's a change of season here. We have, today's been really hot summer weather, and so my body's going through changes, and I find, excuse me, I find my throat, I'm clearing it all the time now, so forgive me. Bear with me, please. But today, I was meditating on what to do today, and I thought, might share some of the highlights of the course with you today, if possible, because we really took a powerful next step in the journey out of victim-tyrant consciousness and into the new paradigm of the heart. And I know how important this is for each of us right now, especially during these challenging times that we're in. And in case, I know some of you wrote to me, you're interested in getting the pre-recorded version of the course. And we will be offering that sometime in the coming months. We'll offer a pre-recorded version of it, so you can be on the lookout for that. And when I was meditating on today, I felt like there were 4 specific topics that came forward primarily. So we'll focus on those. And also from my conversations with people and from what I can feel, some of these things are just on everyone's mind, it seems like. And one of them is about healing the divisions that are happening all over the world, certainly in the United States, but everywhere, really. And especially healing the polarity between liberals and conservatives. It just seems to be growing in such an extreme way. So we'll look at that. We'll talk about it. And then also, of course, the U.S. presidential election. I know most of the people on these calls are Americans, but I would like to approach this from a spiritual perspective, to see it from a higher perspective. And of course, it does affect the whole world. So no matter what country you are from, I hope that you get something out of this. That's my intention. And I know, a lot of people listen to the call later after it's recorded, and it does go out. So wherever you are, if you're listening to this, we've tailored this class for everybody. So one of the other things that I got a very clear download about, I got a new teaching on an old principle that Leslie shared with us long, long ago. She talked to us a lot about something she called grounding on the core. And there was something new that came forward with that, so I'm going to share about that today. And then lastly, the 4th thing is to talk about freedom and sovereignty and what that is, what that's about. Pardon me. And to dive into it a little bit. We'll see how much time we have for that. It's a lot. But also, as always, we welcome questions and sharing. Many people wrote in the past month. So we'll be reading we can't do all of them, but we'll read some of the questions and sharings. And if you have any questions or sharings that come up during the call today, you're also welcome to send those to Barbara, and she'll look at them at the end, and we'll see if we can fit some of them in. Barbara, would you like to remind people about how they could send in a question to you in writing today?
Yes. Those of you who are on the web are familiar on the internet, so you can write as you normally do. And for those of you who are on the phone who are calling in, you can send it to me at courses, COURSES, at CoreLight.org.
Great. Thank you, Barbara.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so why don't we go ahead and start with our guided meditation, as we always do, and then we'll segue from there into our discussion for the day. So I invite you to close your eyes and get comfortable and take a few long, slow, deep breaths. Deeply relax. Oh. I know many people need to multitask while you listen, and this is a great time to just stop and receive, because this is a time where we receive a transmission of Shakti from Leslie. And so I invite you to pause in your busy day, busy morning, whatever time you're listening to this, whether you're present with us now or in the future, doesn't matter, because the transmission is part of the recording and you receive it whether you're with us live or not. So as you breathe, and as you release any tension in your body with each exhale, just tune in and feel the beautiful transmission that comes to us at this time. It's a field that we create together. And as I said, time and space don't really exist at this level, so it doesn't matter if you're listening in the future or not. You will receive the gift of the energy, the healing energy, the Shakti. So just continue to breathe and relax, long and slow. Just go yin, which is receptive. It's the receptive state. And we invite you to tune in to these levels of reality beyond time and space, where we're all connected in the heart and in love and in the unity consciousness. And we'll be receiving this transmission now during the meditation, but it comes through during the entire call. So even if you're not meditating when we're talking, you can still be quiet and calm and receptive and receive the energy. Breathing in the light, the life force that surrounds you. Breathing it down deeply into the bottom of your lungs. And breathing out any tension or stress that you might be holding on to anywhere in your body. Breathing in this present moment, the gift of the present. Breathing out any concerns or worries about the past or the future. Deeply, deeply letting go. And while you continue the breathing, long and slow and deep, let's also do a muscular relaxation from head to toes. I invite you to just feel beautiful warm liquid like honey pouring over the top of your head, relaxing all the muscles that it touches, from the scalp over the forehead, all the muscles, the little tiny muscles around the eyes, hundreds of little muscles there. Just relaxing deeply, letting the eyeballs fall back into their sockets, letting go. Relaxing your temples and your cheeks and your nose, ears, your mouth, the jaw. Relaxing the back of the tongue, especially the back of the tongue, which relaxes that whole region. The jaw, the back of the neck, back of the head, whole neck. shoulders. Feel all that whole area letting go of any tension. Deeply relaxing. Feel the warm honey pouring over your chest, relaxing those muscles in your upper back, all the way down your arms to the hands and fingers. Oh, relaxing your torso, feeling this beautiful wave of warm energy pouring over you, relaxing your lower back and your abdomen, your pelvis, the whole pelvic region, the psoas muscles that run down the front of the hips. That was my fault, that noise. I apologize. Turning off email programs that ding and beep. So we shouldn't be interrupted anymore from that. Deeply relaxing the legs, upper legs, lower legs, ankles, feet, and toes. Fully releasing and letting go of any tension. And let's all do a scan of the body from head to toes one more time. Breathing in light to any place where you're holding on to tension and releasing that energy, giving it back to Mother Earth. Let's begin the energetic portion of the meditation by putting our attention on the crown chakra, which is beautiful vortex on the top of the head. If you knew, sits on the top of your head like a crown that a king or a queen would wear. Opens up and out like a funnel, like a 1,000-petaled lotus. You just feel it on top of your head, unfurling petal by petal, opening up. It's beautiful, sensitive, like a halo. If you're a sensitive person, you can feel it sometimes, like a sombrero sitting on the top of the head. If you can't feel the chakras, that's totally okay. You just visualize it and set the intention that that's what you like. And it will happen one day. So feel the crown chakra opening up and out, wide and far. And let's send the energy of our core, the Sushumna, which is that central meridian, the core of light within us, that runs down the center of the spine, the center of the body, right in front of the spine. Let's send the Sushumna, that energy of the core, right out of the crown and up into the cosmos, way up into the celestial realms, connecting with whatever source you feel to be your divine connection, whether it's the spiral galaxy or the sun or a group of celestial beings, saints or angels. You might see their hands above your head. Whatever source it is, just visualize it and feel it pouring a beautiful, divine, celestial energy down into your body. Filling up your crown. The crown collects it like a funnel. You might feel it like a beautiful golden white light raining down from above, filling you up, filling up your aura, filling up your body. Just allow it. Relax and absorb this beautiful, divine energy. Feel all of your cells like miniature sponges soaking up this light. Trillions of little sponges inside your body soaking in the light. Filling you up. Filling you up all the way down to your fingertips and toes. So much that the light begins to shoot out your fingertips and your toes. Beautiful feeling. While you continue to fill up, let's bring our awareness down to the root chakra. Gently put your awareness there. Place the base of the spine, perineum, and feel just by gently putting your attention there how it automatically and naturally opens, relaxes. Feel the relaxation. As the root opens. And then let's drop our grounding cord down into the center of the earth. Connecting your grounding cord with the core of the earth. Feeling yourself being gently pulled down to the earth by gravity and feeling the support of Mother Earth beneath your feet and your body in the form of the floor and the chair. Just letting go. Deep, deep breath and relaxing, allowing yourself to fall into the arms of Mother Earth like a little baby relaxes in its mother's arms. Completely letting go, completely relaxing. And draw the earth energy up into your body through the soles of your feet. Up your legs. Beautiful grounding, healing, balancing, anchoring energy. Draw it all the way up the core, the Sushumna, all the way up to the crown. Healing and balancing each chakra as you move past it. Navel chakra, solar plexus, heart, thymus, throat, third eye, and the crown. Sending that beautiful earth energy up and out the crown, all the way up into the celestial realms. And continuing to feel that beautiful divine energy from above raining down on you. So feeling the connection of heaven and earth. Feeling your body, your physical body, as the center point between heaven and earth. And just feel yourself suspended there between the two. Relaxing, letting go, like you're weightless, like you're in space, like you're an astronaut, just weightless in space, held gently between heaven and earth. Filling up with energy. And as you hold this beautiful space, I'm going to say a prayer and an invocation for our call today. We call on the Great Spirit, Divine Mother, Father God, Self that we all are. We call on all the guides, teachers, angels, all the beings in the invisible realms who surround us in the highest love and support, And I invite each of you now to call on your own guides who you know support you. Invite them into this call to share in this sacred space with us. Hold this beautiful energy of love, light, and healing. So we call on our guides who surround us in the highest love and support, and we ask that you please wrap us up in a cocoon, beautiful golden white, healing love and light. Please guide our conversation today into the highest love and the highest wisdom. Please hold our hands as we walk this path during these challenging times into our soul's highest purpose in this incarnation, this amazing time. And we give thanks knowing that this is so. We're deeply, deeply grateful for this time that we share together, this sacred space that we create, for the love that we share with each other, that we receive today. We give thanks for these beautiful bodies that we get to wear, which are on loan to us from Mother Earth for a few years. We give thanks for our experience on this amazing, beautiful, fragile blue planet. We're at the pivot point in human evolution, moving into this new paradigm of the heart. And it is such a momentous time to be incarnate in a human body here. We understand that we're not the envy, but the focus, maybe is a better word, of many beings in the invisible realms, because it's the greatest show on earth, the greatest show in the cosmos, rather. So anyway, we give thanks with deep, deep gratitude, ala la ho, which means, isn't it wonderful? In Tibetan. So thank you, everybody. When you're ready, slowly bring your energy back into the room and into your body. Wiggle your fingers and toes. When you're ready, slowly open your eyes. Welcome. Welcome again. I wanted to start today by reading a poem. Lindley sent this poem to me, and I just loved it. So thank you, Lindley. I'm going to read it today. It's called I Voted. I voted today. I dropped my heart into the ballot box and cast my vote for the world I want to see. I voted for country over party and planet over country. I voted for everyone and their dog. I voted for ancestors and the dream they prayed we would fulfill. I voted for the children, carnivals, and innocence and joy. I voted for the elders, soft wisdom, busy hands weaving webs of time. I voted for the divine feminine to rise again and take her throne. I voted for the moon. I voted for owls and crows and croaking toads and ancient forests teeming with life. I voted for the Great Spirit to guide us toward our rightful place at the feet of the sacred, through the gates of conscience, that we may find our way back home. And of course, I voted for love. Now what to do? But wait for the ballots to be counted. Meanwhile, rivers roar, bones rattle, past and future ages hold their breath. They are waiting to see if our hearts will reawaken. Eyes open and ears pricked forward, songs on the tips of their tongues, ready to welcome us back to the chorus of life. I voted today. I voted for you and me, free. I voted that we'll make it back home together, alive. That is a poem by Shannon Wills. So thank you, Shannon. I don't know Shannon Wills, but I'm grateful to you. It really inspired me, and I hope it does you too. So let's talk first about healing division. As I mentioned on the beginning of the call, if you were late, it just seems like this is a topic that's up for almost everybody. And I've talked with many friends and family members, and the division is off the charts, as you probably know, especially between liberals and conservatives, not just in the U.S. but around the world. And I heard stories about people. Sorry. People sending notices out to their family and friends that anyone who didn't vote for their candidate would be erased from their lives forever. And things like, groups kicking out supporters of the other candidate. And it's just insane out there. And it's not just one side doing this; it's both sides, liberals, conservatives. And I've got, as I said, many friends and family on both sides of the polarization. So I've talked about this, maybe it was a few years ago, it might have been 4 years ago during the last presidential election, but I've really made it a point in my life to research both sides. And I was talking, and I've already talked about it before, and I know most of you have heard it, so I won't go into great detail about it. But I was talking with one friend on the subject, and I was sharing about these practices that I do. And if you've been on the monthly calls much at all the last few months, you know that the practices that I'm practicing and that I advocate invite everybody to practice, it's holding space. It's practicing neither believing nor disbelieving in the different narratives that are out there, and holding the tension between the two sides of the polarity and allowing for a third option to manifest. And these are ancient spiritual principles. Also, principles that Carl Jung, the famous Swiss psychologist, proposed as well. So anyway, I was having this conversation with my friend, and he wasn't happy with everything that I was saying, and I could feel that. And he said at one point, I'm not going to tell you all the details, but he said at one point that it sounded to him like apathy, and that if I didn't choose a side, that was as good as a vote for the enemy. And I just thought, wow, that's very similar to the attitude of, if you're not with me, you're against me. And that is a certain way to division and to polarization. And ultimately, that's what causes wars. So I told him, I said, no, it's not apathy at all. I've taken so much time over so many years to just research both sides, all the different narratives. There are many narratives out there. And I love all my friends and family on both sides. And these are all very educated, very intelligent people for the most part. And so I guess one of the conclusions that I came to is that there's manipulation happening somehow. I can't necessarily explain it to you, but I can tell you there's some kind of manipulation going on, because each side is being told why the other side is wrong and delusional at best, and at worst, evil. And it's a setup, what we call a setup, a spiritual setup for the polarization that we're in right now. And I listened to this dear friend of mine, highly intelligent man, and he was incredibly dismissive of the other side. And I was very surprised because of our friendship and his intelligence. And so I listened to him, and I guess what I heard were a lot of talking points that I've heard from the mainstream media on the one side. And it sounded to me like rhetoric. It sounded like, rhetoric that he'd been given by the media to help justify a position. And he had taken it on as his own belief system. and didn't even realize that he'd done that, but essentially that's what it was. And so, even though it has its logic and it makes sense from that one viewpoint, it's still one-sided. So I feel like all of us, at some level of our being, we're tending to believe what the media is telling us. We're tending to believe what we're told. And there are a lot of studies that have been done about this. And it seems as though the way the manipulation works is that 90% of what we hear from a media source that's doing this, I'm not saying they all do it, but 90% of it is true, but 10% is an opinion, or it's a slant that whoever owns that media, it's a slant that is intended to influence our thinking, and we never know which part is the 10%. So it's very effective. It's been proven a very effective way to influence how we think. And I'm just scratching the surface here. I mean, this is a whole, you've probably watched some of the documentaries that are out there on the subject. They've been out for many years. There's some new ones. It's fascinating stuff about how we are being influenced, how our thinking is being influenced. So I won't go into the details of that. You probably know, if you're doing this research, you know what I'm talking about. So anyway, when I asked, I had sent my friend a few of the things that I found credible from the other narrative, things that weren't like just way out there, that were very credible people that when I attuned to the people who were in these documentaries, to the facts they were presenting, to the energy behind it, it held a real solid, grounded transmission of energy. It wasn't woo-woo stuff. So I sent him a couple of these things. And when I asked him if he'd had a chance to watch them, he said no. And I said, well, how can you dismiss, because he was dismissing them. I said, well, how can you dismiss them if you haven't even listened to it? And he said, well, I'm not going to watch them because that's conspiracy theory stuff. I said, but how do you know that? And he said, I just know. And it was like, okay, I saw right there. All right, that's pretty amazing. How can you even have a conversation? We couldn't have a conversation about it. And again, I'm talking about a very intelligent person. And so I wanted to further the conversation by saying, well, that's how the polarization happens, is when you don't listen to the other side because you think you know. And I couldn't even say that. And so I just let go. And I thought, that's how the judgment happens. That's how we begin to judge the other side. And at that point, if we've done that, we've dismissed and, cut it off and just said, I'm not listening because I know what's right. It's a recipe for not being able to hold a neutral witness anymore. And the neutral witness, if you've been around CoreLight for any amount of time, that you know that that's probably the most important practice we can all be doing as we're on this journey of awakening. And we talk about it in the Marriage of Spirit book a lot. So every month I feel like I'm recommending to reread that chapter. If you haven't had a chance to reread it in a while, it's fantastic. Leslie wrote a brilliant chapter on the neutral witness. So anyway, I said what I realized, and I think was what I said to him, it was like the argument that he gave was exactly the argument that the other side gives as well. So neither side will even listen to each other. So this is about keeping an open mind. It's about not just witnessing, but as I said before, practicing neither believing nor disbelieving, taking the information in, not judging it, not dismissing anything, but just allowing it to be, to receive it and let it go if it doesn't resonate as truth, or, use some of it if you want to. But these are all very important practices right now. So I wanted to talk a little bit about judgment, about the judging today, to try to understand it a little bit more. I've meditated on it. I made a little list here. About how we fall into judgment. And so excuse me while I look at my notes. The first thing is us versus them. That's judgment. When we do the judging, It's about that. It's about creating an us versus them mentality. We immediately polarize. So it's seeing things as black and white and lacking the ability to see the million shades of gray in between. And, that's a spiritual practice. That is an ancient spiritual practice. It is a quality. If you have that ability to see the million shades of gray in between, that's the quality of a diplomat. It's the quality of an evolved spiritual soul, spiritual being. So if you feel you don't have that, it's a great thing to practice. And so another point on my list here is that both sides are projecting at each other. We project onto the outside our own unconscious self. So stuff that we don't want to look at, stuff that we suppress, gets projected out. We stuff it into the unconscious. It gets projected out, and the outside world picks it up and mirrors it back to us. So that's what's happening here. And I made a very short polarity list, and I was going to invite everybody. This is a great exercise if you want to do this at home, but to create a polarity list around this projection that's going on. My list just was very quick. Started with delusional, foolish, inhuman, evil, bad people, assuming bad intent, wrong thinking, immoral. And again, this is both sides. Both sides are projecting this at each other. And it's because of what each one's being told. They're being told different things, so they believe different. They believe different, exact polar opposite viewpoints. So I invite you to continue that list. As I said, it's a start, and then as you know, if you've been around CoreLight for any length of time, you can write the polarities out as well. Do the opposite sides, and then make an offering of the list and let both sides go. Another point on my list is lack of tolerance and respect and empathy for the other side. Another point on my list is feeling righteous indignation. So these are all aspects of judgment. And I'm sure there's much, much more. But this is what I came up with, and maybe you have more things that you can share with the group today if you want to write it in. But maybe meditate on this and come up with your own fleshing out of judgment. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the reconciliation, or the solution to judgment. And I made a little list of those things too. So let's see. The first one was, we need to adopt a mindset of learning about the other side. If we enter into this with what spiritually is known as beginner's mind, it's an ancient Zen teaching. There was one of the spiritual classic books is called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. And if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. But it is about adopting this mindset of innocence and of learning about whatever's in front of you. So approaching this subject as learning about the other side, and it begins with listening. To simply listen without judgment. Another point on my list for the solution to judging is that it also begins with asking questions of the other party. And we can ask them things like, what are your fears? What are your concerns? What are your desires? What are your intentions? These are great conversation openers. And if you really listen, if you really want to know what this opposite side is feeling, ask those questions with a genuine desire to know, and then take it in, and don't listen with, a lot of people listen while they're thinking of what they're going to say next to retort or to counter the argument, to put your own what you're thinking out, to put your own ideas out. And that's not the way to approach this. You want to simply listen. You don't want to try to combat with your own ideas yet. So that can come later. So another point on the list is being willing to see any place where they might point out something weak in your position. So being open to say, well, if they have a criticism of you and your side, quote unquote, that they think you're on, being willing to see where there might be something that is weak, and also to see any place where their position has some worthiness. So those are also very helpful if you want to create a bridge, to enter into it with that attitude. Another thing on the list is finding a compromise. That's also very helpful to, if you're trying to build bridges, if you're trying to find a solution for judgment. Not taking things so personally. Another thing is, can you learn to have tolerance, respect, and compassion for your opponent? So what comes to me is, what I have found is that if there's somebody who's attacking you, this is challenging. If you're in a conversation like this and the person's trying to attack you, it's very difficult to have tolerance, respect, and compassion for them. So the exercise that I do in those, it doesn't happen very often anymore, but it does from time to time. And when it happens, this is what I practice. If they're attacking me because of my beliefs or some kind of character flaw or whatever, what I know is that I practice witnessing, of course, that's number one. But I will only get offended if I'm afraid that some part of what they're saying might be true. So let me give you an example. If this person, this hypothetical person, is saying something like, well, I hate you and you're an awful person because your skin is green. Well, you know that you don't have to take offense at that because you know your skin's not green. And obviously this is their own issue. It has something to do with their own seeing because they're not seeing correctly. So you can simply let that go. You can laugh about it, or you can, just be silent or whatever. You don't have to even react to it. And it's very easy to let it go and not take it personally. And it's easy to have compassion for them, actually, because you see how delusional they actually are. But if you're afraid that what they're saying might be true, even a little bit, that's when you start to take offense and you might get angry and you might try to defend yourself. So, like, for example, if I thought maybe it was some part of my skin that was green, I'd be questioning, I'd have self-doubt, and then I'd start to think, oh, I better try to hide that next time. I better try to defend myself against that. And, you might actually try to defend yourself against that person and get angry with them or whatever. So if that's happening, if you're getting angry, if you're taking offense, if you're taking it personally and feeling that righteous indignation, that sense that you need to defend yourself, then that becomes a process. That becomes something to really look at and to clear in ourselves, and to do, you practice self-inquiry, you go and you do your processing, whatever form of processing you like to do on yourself. So another thing on my list is giving the other person the benefit of the doubt. So that's an old one I heard from somebody who was in a 12-step program. I think that's part of the 12. I've never taken the 12 steps, but I know that I believe that that's a part of it. And I think it's very, very important that we do that. We practice that always, to give people the benefit of the doubt, which means not assuming ill intent. If we can assume good or at least neutral intent, that's a huge step in the right direction of not judging. And to remember that we talked about this in the course I just taught on victim tyrant, that the vast majority of people on the planet are not trying to be tyrannical. Nobody thinks they're a tyrant. People are just doing what they feel is right for their own reasons. I mean, it's not nobody. Of course, there are a handful of people who are psychopaths, and they want to be. They like to see people suffer, so they are tyrannical. And a lot of people are in positions of leadership around the world. I'm sorry to laugh about it, but that's the nature of our system right now. That we have a lot of psychopaths in charge. So, okay, so taking the time to find out why they believe what they believe and why they feel their intentions are good ones, assuming that they've got good intent, assuming at least neutral intent, ask them about it, find out what they're thinking. And I remember once when it was an understanding I got when I practiced that with my parents, who are very conservative. I think it was 4 years ago during that presidential election in 2016. And what I came to by practicing this was that we all came to the conclusion together that both sides agree on one thing. We agree that the system is broken and it needs to be fixed, that there's a serious problem with the system. We all agree on that. The place where people disagree is what to do about it, how the change should happen, how to fix it. And that is a huge chasm. But the chasm was bridged when we discovered that we have this deeper level of connection. And it brought about a deeper love than we'd ever had before, just by taking that time to try to understand each other. So that's a great practice if you ever want to try that. A couple more things on the list here. Realizing that so much of arguments and war is based on misunderstandings. So, for example, most people desire to feel seen and heard, and maybe they desire to feel valued, and ultimately, most people want to feel loved, and they also fear that the opponent doesn't see them and doesn't hear them, doesn't value them, and so they feel threatened. And then they feel like they have to defend themselves from an enemy. So if we can work at overcoming these kind of misunderstandings, that's also a huge step towards the peace process. There was a book written by Marshall Rosenberg and a whole body of work by Marshall Rosenberg called Nonviolent Communication. And I know many people in CoreLight have been part of that and are advocates of that. So I've never done it. I've never read the book, but I do know the highlights of it, and I know that it's valuable. But I guess I also want to close this part of the conversation by saying, all of what we're talking about here is actually pretty surface level stuff. This is pretty logical stuff. If you want to create peace, these are basic steps that you need to follow. And it all helps to keep the peace, and it helps build bridges instead of burning bridges. But the truth is that the real healing and the true peace comes when we engage our process around it and we start practicing the self-inquiry, when we are able to go down into those deeper layers of what's happening inside us. And when we start to look at the outside as a mirror of our own unconscious self, that's when we really begin the healing process. And I know most of you on the call are long-time seekers and you know the truth of this, so I'm not going to dwell on it. But if you happen to be new to it and you haven't read the Marriage of Spirit book yet, that's a great place to start, and it offers some really simple and powerful tools for understanding this principle and practicing this kind of healing work. So again, I talked about this before, but one of the most powerful tools in that book is witnessing, practicing witnessing. And that's just in a nutshell, for those of you who might be new, that is about what we call the neutral observer. It's about remaining calm, remaining centered, and not being in judgment, not being attracted or repulsed. And when you witness, you actually remember who you truly are. You remember that you are the pure awareness, that you are a soul having a human experience, and you remember that we're living in this virtual reality, essentially, and called planet Earth. And one day we'll drop our bodies, and it'll all be over, and we'll return home to who we truly are. So to remember as you witness that this too shall pass, and that this is all a simulation in the virtual reality that we're learning from. We come here to have these experiences to learn our lessons, and to actually we come here to experience joy. We come here to experience love. That's what the purpose of all of this is. So this crazy fighting that we're in, it just boggles my mind. I think, oh my goodness. All right. I'm looking at the time and I realized we could go on, but let's move on. I want to talk also about the spiritual principle that Leslie taught us long, long ago, and a new insight I had about it. And it's called grounding on the core. So I know many of you will remember this, but this circles back to what we were talking about before, about not being able to trust what we're being told because there's manipulation happening. And I know when I talk about this, it sometimes pushes people's buttons because it sounds like paranoia, and it can sound like conspiracy theory stuff. But I hope you'll just bear with me while we talk about this spiritual principle, whether you believe in what I'm saying or not. I had this spiritual breakthrough in the last couple of weeks around this, because I was reminded of the spiritual teaching of learning to ground on the core. So I want to explain what that teaching is first, before I share what I saw. And the principle is essentially that we learn in childhood to identify with and to attach ourselves to people, to things, to all the things of our world that help us to form an understanding of who we are. And that's simply the nature of the ego. The ego just does this naturally. So in other words, we're learning to ground on these things in our world. And it starts very early as children. We learn to ground on our parents, number one. But eventually, as we get older, we ground on our relationships. We ground on our spouses and other people. We ground on our homes, ground on our money, our jobs, our cars, all the parts of our world that help us to have a sense of an egoic identity in the world. That's what we ground on, and it's perfectly natural. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just what we do as humans. But we are programmed to do that. That's what happens. It's a habit. It's a way of thinking and a way of being in the world. And we can change that. And there does come a point where we start to wake up to the fact that there's more to life than these things and these people and these attachments that we have. And that's when we begin to discover that grounding on those things is really not such a good idea. Because when we ground on people and things, it's temporary. And when we lose that thing, we get very sad, we get disconsolate, and we go through huge processes around loss and betrayal, and we spiral down into the negative ego. And when we start to discover this, it's usually the beginning of our conscious spiritual path. And we start to release our attachments to these things at that point. So that if and when that relationship ends or the prized possession is taken away, we don't have to feel so bereft, and we begin to realize that that's being locked into the ego. And if we want to ascend, in consciousness, if we want to wake up to who we truly are, the fact that we are spirit, we are love, then this is a very important practice to ground on the core. And let me explain what that is. Leslie used to talk with us about this. Grounding on, which she called grounding on the core, and it's a path of learning to ground on spirit. So it's literally grounding on your own interconnection with your spiritual core. You could call it the Sushumna if you want, or whatever you want to call it, but it's grounding on your own spiritual core of energy. And ultimately, that's really the only thing you can ground on, because it's the only thing that's permanent. None of those other things are permanent. They're all going to be taken away at some point. At death, we have to leave them all behind, all our relationships, all our possessions, even planet Earth. So ultimately, the only thing we take with us when we leave is the love. And that's who we truly are, is the love. So we're learning to ground on that ultimate ground of being, which is the love that we truly are. And that, when we learn how to do that, that is our true freedom. That is lasting happiness. That is how we feel fulfilled and joyful in life. So that being said, the breakthrough that I had around this was a couple of weeks ago, because I was mulling all of the stuff over that we've been talking about in the session today. And I realized that there was something that I hadn't realized that I was grounding on, and that many people are grounding on, especially my friend who I was talking to that I told you about, and that is information. We are all grounding on information. And I feel like part of what's happening right now is that we're being invited to let go of grounding on information. So I realized that part of the division that we're all experiencing is because of the programming we got in childhood to believe what we're being told by authority figures, to believe the information we get from the outside, especially if it comes from an authority figure. It begins with our parents when we're small, and then it gets reinforced, especially at school, where we're told by an authority figure what we can do, what we can't do, where we can go, when we can go there, what's right, what's wrong, and so on and so on and so on. And we're programmed from a very young age to do what we're told, to obey the authority, to be afraid of not obeying an authority. And if we don't, we get to suffer the consequences. So, of course, we take all of that with us into adulthood. It's because it gets ingrained because it's a very intense system of punishments and rewards, and so it's deep in us. And we may not, I'm sure many of you on the call have been on the spiritual path for decades. You know about this, but I would bet you if we took a poll, most people would say we're not quite finished letting go of that programming. So this is up to each of us to look at and decide where we're at with it. But I guess, what we can say is that we take all of it with us into adulthood. And as adults, we tend to believe the information that the media and the government and other authority figures, doctors and so forth, tell us, because that's just what we do. So I feel like the lesson now is not to ground on the information we're given from the outside, but rather to listen, take it in, and then weigh it against our own intuition and our own inner knowing and our own heart, and decide for ourselves if we agree with it or not. And if we get a feeling that something is off about it, then we let it go. But if we feel it's truth, we keep it. And that's, I feel like, what Leslie was telling us. I feel like right now we're being invited to this new level of grounding on the core. And when we can't ground anymore on the information that we're receiving from the outside, we get to develop an even stronger relationship with our own inner connection to spirit. It's a deeper connection to spirit that we're being invited into here by practicing this. So I think this would be another great exercise if you want to practice something else in the coming months until we meet next time. So let me see if I can say it here in a succinct way. The practice would be witnessing yourself, witnessing your thoughts and your habits and your actions, and see where it is that you tend to ground on information. And how strong is your need to ground on information? And how do you tend to create your identity around the information you're taking in, especially information from the media? So remember that as you witness yourself in this way, all that means is that you're observing neutrally. You're not judging yourself. It's not about fixing anything. This is just an exercise of watching with some detachment and non-judgment. And so it's a great opportunity to practice what we've been talking about for so long, which is neither believing nor disbelieving. Just witnessing whatever arises and being okay with it, and then journaling about whatever you observe. So it's a simple exercise, but I think it has a lot of power. Okay, so let's move on to the next topic. I was asked to talk about this. People wanted to talk about the U.S. presidential election, so I thought I would just try to address it a little bit from a spiritual perspective. And I guess I would start by saying that my experience has been for a very long time that nothing is as it appears. And my intuition, my inner knowing is that it's been this way for a while, that no matter which candidate was to take office, that we're in for massive change. There's massive change coming to the United States and to the world one way or another. So we've got this, it's as though there's a destiny for humanity to go through this shift from the third dimension, or whatever you want to call it, the patriarchy or the system of separation, whatever. It's got many names. But we're going through this shift into the new paradigm of heart-centered consciousness. And that's what we know. That's assured. And really, the choices we make along the way are the things that determine how long the process takes, how bumpy the ride has to be, how messy things get, how easy it is, how not easy, whatever, how difficult. So I guess I would say the choice of candidates, to me, they seem so incredibly different on the surface, but what we're really looking at here is a broken system that really needs to change. And so I guess the way I've been holding this election is that, looking at the choice of candidates more like the difference between ripping off a Band-Aid versus a slow peel of a Band-Aid. One way or another, that Band-Aid's going to come off. And that's where we're headed. So my invitation, I guess I would say, is that if you feel heavily invested in one side or the other, it's probably best not to get too happy or too sad about the outcome based on who you were for, because I don't feel this is about one side or the other. We're in for some turbulent times ahead. Change always brings turbulent times. And I know that can sound scary, so I want to talk about that. This is not intended to scare anybody, for sure. I don't think we need to be afraid at all. I know many, many people are in fear. And I think it's so important to remember so much is happening under the surface right now. So many good things are going on, so many changes on the inner planes and behind the scenes. And we just don't know about all of it. So I've always felt that it's really important to remember that we're getting what we prayed for. We've been praying for so long for this change. We're so tired of the corruption and the greed and the injustice and the war and all the problems, the misogyny, the homophobia, the racism, all the problems of the old system, we're tired of it. And we've been praying for so long for peace and for this new paradigm of heart-centeredness and all those qualities of love and generosity and compassion. And, the more, as my friend Charles says, the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible. So we've been praying for that. And I was remembering, when I was thinking about what to share with you today, I was remembering something that came to me back in March at the very beginning of this whole COVID situation. And I got this really clear download. And it was like words came into my head. And the words were, the slaves are being freed now. So I really got it, like this is the end of our enslavement. And that's a big statement to make. So we don't have time really to unpack it thoroughly today, but I guess I would just say that it's pretty obvious that for millennia, humanity has been slaves to the money system. We've been slaves to the clock. We've been slaves to the ego. We've been slaves to the system of separation. We've been slaves to our own habits of thinking that get programmed into us every incarnation. And all of that is coming to an end now. That's what this is about. This birth of the whole new system is the beginning of our freedom. And we are going to know new levels of freedom that we've never imagined. Beautiful things are going to be created. We are moving into this. This is what's assured. But also, it's true that things need to fall apart. And that can feel scary. So I think most of the fear that people are in right now is around this understanding at some level of our being that, we don't know what's coming. And that's scary. So it's the fear of the unknown. Let's name it, okay? The fear of the unknown. A huge quantity of the fear on the planet could be chalked up to that, the fear of the unknown. And another fear that I know of is that many people who are in this division energy, one of their worst fears is that the other side is going to take over. I'm sorry, but if there weren't so much at stake, it would be really, really comical. Because if you look at it, one side is afraid of the other one taking over, and it neither has to be true. So anyway, there's a lot more there with fear. And I guess this is one more exercise. I know I'm giving you a lot of exercises today, but you don't have to, of course, you don't have to do them all. I'm just throwing them out there in case any of them appeal to you. But one exercise that's really good right now is to make a list of all your fears. Because when you name your fears, that's when you can process them and let them go. So you could maybe consider that exercise if you find yourself in fear, making a list of the fears and processing them. And I guess to close out on this note, what I would say is that as we clear those fears, that's when the doorway to freedom starts to open. So let's move on. I want to make sure there's time for questions and sharing and so on. So this is the last topic, I believe, and it's about freedom. And I feel like it's a good note to close on today because I feel how important it is. And we talked about it in the course that I just offered, the New Paradigm of the Heart course. We talked about freedom. We also talked about sovereignty, which is a similar thing. And so I feel like both are important topics for these times that we're in. And I know that we're going to be continuing to focus on them more and more in the coming times. So what is freedom anyway? If we had to define freedom, what would it be? So think about that for a moment. What is freedom to you? So I would say freedom is the ability to do what we want. And that includes being able to say what we want, think what we want, do what we want, and so on. That's freedom. And that's the opposite of slavery. So that's what we're coming into. We're coming into our freedom. And what is sovereignty? I know some people don't know what the word means. So the definition, if you look it up, it's really about having the power, having the right for a body to govern itself without any interference from the outside. So sovereignty, that word sovereignty usually applies to countries, or like, for example, the governing body of a country, like royalty, has dominion over a country. But it also applies to each of us as individuals. And it also applies to us as souls. So to have the full right and the full power to govern your life, for our soul to have sovereignty and be able to govern itself, that's what we're looking at here. This is the new paradigm. We are moving into that level of freedom and sovereignty. And I remembered, as I was thinking about this today and thinking about what to say, I remembered when we last met in September for our call, we talked about totalitarianism. We talked about how totalitarianism is creeping all around the planet. This creeping totalitarianism, and again, I want to be clear. I'm not talking about one party or the other, or one candidate or the other. It has nothing to do with that. Both sides accuse each other of it, and there are grains of truth in both accusations. So there's this creep of totalitarianism, no matter which country you're from, no matter what party you choose, no matter if you consider yourself liberal or conservative. This is what's happening on the planet. So it's part of the change. This is part of the change that's happening right now for all of us. We're in this time where we're witnessing this creeping of totalitarianism, and we're making choices about it in our own lives. How do we feel about it? What do we want to do about it? How much are we willing to be told what to do by some outside authority, and what are we willing to obey and not obey? These are the kinds of questions that we're going to be forced to look at in the coming times. And so with this, we can actively be choosing to move out of our enslavement and into this new system, into our freedom, more and more and more. And so we're also recognizing that it's an opportunity. It's the time now to step into our sovereignty, where we can choose to take back our full rights and our full powers to govern ourselves. And again, it's both as individuals, as souls, and it's also as a collective. So what's happening, I would say, is that we're actively taking our projections of power and authority off of the outside, and we're starting more and more to own our own power and authority. And that's quite a journey. That is quite a journey. It's a huge topic, and we're not going to go into it really too much here. But I was feeling like maybe I would like to offer an intensive on this topic sometime next year, because it feels like it's such an important issue right now, and I'd love to discuss it more with you. But I'm aware that it's the rare person who has an understanding of this and who has the courage to actively embrace this path consciously. Not for everybody, and that's okay. There's no judgment here. It's just that it's because of our childhood programming, to obey authority and to be afraid of not obeying authority. And the truth is that most people just want to be told what to do, and that's okay. That's their path. But I feel like it's really important that we all recognize that we're being given a choice right now. We don't have to do that. We don't have to be happy with just being told what to do, because we're being offered this golden opportunity to move into our sovereignty and our freedom. So I'd like to conclude this with another invitation and another exercise that I'll throw out there. Again, you're going to be busy if you want to do all of these. But for the next month, you could try this. I thought of it. It's 2 parts. And part one would be to witness your thoughts and your actions and your habits in terms of, I've written these down, I'm just going to read them, in terms of several different points. Where in your life are you still feeling enslaved? Where in your life are you still feeling enslaved? Where are you still feeling like you're being told what to do and how to think? That's kind of the same thing as being enslaved. Where are you seeing others act like slaves to the system? Write about what you witness and how you feel about all of it. Remember with witnessing that it's important not to judge, just to observe neutrally. And there's a part 2 to this, but before I say about part 2, I guess I want to just add here that you might find that this exercise is easier said than done, because the truth of it is that we're like the fish swimming in the water and we don't notice the water, and the water that we're swimming in is our own enslavement. It's the enslavement to the money system and to the clock and to the system of separation, as I said before. So another way of saying it is victim consciousness, and we talked about this during the course. The water that we're all swimming in is victim consciousness. And I have to tell you, I know many of you on the call were in the course, and I want to thank you for your feedback. Many people told me that they were able to take another step out of victim consciousness. They didn't realize how much they were in victim consciousness. But by doing these kinds of exercises, by focusing on this, we can all see a new level. It doesn't matter how long you've been on the path. Unless you're full-blown enlightened, you've got this going on somewhere inside you. So I invite you to take a look, to look at where you might be still unaware that you're swimming in this water of victim consciousness or enslavement, whatever you want to call it. And the second part of the exercise is to do a few affirmations. And you can do them daily, or you could do them many times a day, as many times as you care to. And so here are the affirmations. I'm going to read them. I see how many there are, probably 8 or 9. So I'm just going to say them, and if you feel like it, you can speak them out loud or say them inwardly, depending on what situation you're in there where you were listening. But I invite you to speak them if you want to, or just repeat them inwardly if you want to. And then please don't do it just because I'm suggesting you do it. Do it only if you feel that it's true for you. Okay, so here we go. Just close your eyes. Take a few long, deep breaths. I own my power and authority. I own my power and authority. I own my power and authority. I take my projections of power and authority off the outside. I take my projections of power and authority off the outside. I take my projections of power and authority off the outside. I'm a free and sovereign individual. I'm a free and sovereign individual. I'm a free and sovereign individual. I make my own choices based on what I feel is right and true. I make my own choices based on what I feel is right and true. I make my own choices based on what I feel is right and true. I choose love over fear. I choose love over fear. I choose love over fear. I make choices based on my own inner truth over the need to conform or obey. I make choices based on my own inner truth over the need to conform or obey. I make choices based on my own inner truth over the need to conform or obey. I choose my freedom and sovereignty. I choose my freedom and sovereignty. I choose my freedom and sovereignty. Okay, so I hope this has been helpful, and I want to leave this with you for now. And I would just say, remember what an exciting time we are in. You know, this is the birth. It's the birth of the new paradigm of the heart. And to enjoy that, to appreciate that, to feel happy about it if you can, as much as possible. And to remember also that nothing is as it appears right now, and that we are getting what we prayed for. So it's the beginning. It's the beginning of the massive change, and the practice of witnessing and neither believing nor disbelieving, holding the tension between the two sides of the polarity so a third way can manifest. These are all the practices that we can be doing. And it's a fantastic time now that the holidays are starting to approach in the United States. I know most of you are from the U.S., so I'll speak to you, but it's a great time. Well, it's winter in the Northern Hemisphere, and vast majority of you are from there. So it's a perfect time to slow down and take an opportunity to pause and just listen to yourself and practice your self-care. Take care of yourself, nurture yourself. Because it's been a challenge, as you know. I mean, it's been what a time, huh? All right, my friends, I feel I've talked enough. I'd like to turn this over now. Barbara, would you like to hop on with us, and let's talk about questions and answers and sharing?
Sounds good, Brad. I was just checking the web as well as you were just finishing up. This is just so wonderful, so grounding, so helpful, so liberating.
Good.
So thank you, Brad.
Yeah, thank you.
So just to remind everyone, and Brad, please do jump in here and speak to this, that we're doing questions that have been sent in. I know that our format used to be hand-raising kind of thing, and we have quite a few questions. So just want to make those of you on the call aware that if you have a question or a comment, right now, that we are looking at those pre-written questions or those on the web. So I just wanted to give
Thank you, Barbara.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Thank you for reminding us about that. And yeah, we used to do live open mic, and we're trying something new now. And a lot of people have really said how much they like this new format of writing the questions. So we're trying this for a while. Let's see how it continues to go.
Okay, great. So the first question we have was sent in by Deborah. And she says, my question is, how do we reach out to people who have inexplicably, to my discernment, supported a candidate who by any objective measure has expressed cruelty and toxic masculinity, to put it politely? How do we break the spell of delusion over those who have believed baseless conspiracy theories? Q is the most extreme example, and create conditions for the light of truth to shine. I can at moments see the spark of Buddha nature, Christ consciousness, deep in the hearts of harm doers, but remain mystified as to how anyone could actually support them and believe the most fantastical delusions about them being, quote, saviors. How do we create our own truth and reconciliation commissions in our immediate circles and in the wider world? Love, hope, and healing, Deborah.
Oh, Deborah, thank you so much. What a great question. I think you spoke for a lot of people, and really, I hope I answered this question mostly in what I've been talking about today. You know, there's quite a bit of overlap here, but I guess I felt like reading this question was important because you do touch on some very specific things. So I'd like to just touch on those few specific things that come to mind to share. And I guess before I do, the first thing I want to say is that I can feel when I tune into your question, I tune into you, I just feel, you know, as so many people have had so much frustration and angst. And I think that it's just important to name that, you know, to know that it's been a really rough road for everyone. And I know so many people who feel that way, and so I think you speak for many. And certainly, you know, there's been an enormous lack of love and compassion shown by our leaders, and you know, and for millennia, misogyny has been the norm. So you know, that's certainly changing. Right, the power of the divine feminine is rising more and more and more all the time in each of us and in the world. So I guess, you know, there've been so many examples of toxic masculinity, as you called it, in our world's quote unquote leaders. You know, I know that at some level of collective consciousness, we choose our leaders based on the wounding that we all need to heal. So misogyny is certainly one area where we're all working on healing. And we know that's happening. And we know there's more coming on that, for sure, you know, because as the power of the feminine continues to rise on the planet, that's happening. And I'm remembering, you know, I've spoken about this many times too, but when Leslie's guides 20 years or more spoke to her, and they said that a lot of enlightened women would be the ones to change the planet. And I know that the Dalai Lama and many other spiritual teachers have said similar things more recently. But I feel like that's just an important point to touch on here, that we all recognize that is changing. And I guess another thing that comes to mind to share is that you know, it's interesting to me how many people I know who follow the different narratives, you know, like Q, for example. You mentioned Q, and I know people who follow that. And it's interesting that many times, you know, both sides are pointing the finger at each other, like we were talking about earlier in the call today. So often they'll say many of the same things about the other side. You know what I mean? It's hard to describe, but they're pointing the fingers at each other, saying the same things about each other. So, in other words, you know, liberals will say many things about the conservatives, and conservatives say many of the same things back about the liberals. And I personally, like I've been saying, is I've followed both narratives. I've tried to track many different things, and I've done a lot of different research on both sides because it started with because I have loved ones on both sides, and I'm just aware that both sides are being fed disinformation, or being fed at least information that makes them despise the other side. And it's making the division grow. And I think that's part of the purpose of this, that it's meant to seed this, because when we're divided, we're more easily conquered, we're more easily controlled. If we're living in fear and chaos and division, we're very easily controlled. And that's, you know, again, we're moving out of that system. It's not going to work. we are going to get through it. We're moving out of that slave system of being controlled by these various systems. And I would just say that I feel like it's so important to remember that there are grains of truth in both sides. There's not one side that's right and one wrong, certainly not. And that's where, again, nothing is as it seems right now. I truly believe that nothing is as it seems. And I keep waiting for the shoe to drop. It's like I keep waiting. There's more coming. You can feel it on the inner planes. If you're sensitive, you can feel this stuff. I know so many channels, so many spiritual teachers, so many psychics that are talking about this, that change is coming. Just wait. There's, we're in store this decade, but especially this year and the coming year or so, year and a half, whatever it is, massive change is going to happen. And there are going to be, exposures of truth at another level that will help us, to see what's really going on. And I feel this is part of what's driving us all partly crazy, is that at some level of our being, we feel the manipulation. We feel the manipulation happening. And we want to know what that is. We want to name it and see it so we can process it and be done with it and go through the healing. And I remember long, long ago when Leslie and I would talk about these things, because she felt it way back then. She felt what was coming. She spoke openly about it sometimes. And I remember we would talk about there would come a day when you won't be able to believe what you're being told. And that may have been true all along, but certainly it's now. I mean, certainly this is the time to be practicing, like I said, like a broken record. I keep practicing neither believing nor disbelieving. So anyway, I guess one other thing that I would share, I want to move on because we have more questions, I know, but another thing that I feel that I could respond to regarding what you said is about the conspiracy theories. And I would just caution, I would just say that I think we have to be really careful about throwing out everything just because it's labeled as a conspiracy theory. Because the term conspiracy theory was created by the CIA in the 1950s. And it was specifically created as a PSYOP, which means psychological operation. And it was an intentional operation used to discredit people whose ideas threatened the mainstream agenda. And so, like, I'll give you an example. I mean, there have been, many of you probably know this, but there's countless documented cases of whistleblowers who, are speaking the truth to try to right an injustice. And there's been this massive and organized and very well-funded campaign to discredit those people who try to expose the truth by calling them conspiracy theorists. And it works. It works really well. We tend to discount those people. We tend to discount all that stuff and just throw it out. But the truth of it, and you don't have to, you don't have to be a psychologist or a rocket scientist to know this, but the truth is that there are conspiracies on this planet. Or a historian, I should say. I mean, there have been many, many known conspiracies that have overthrown governments and leaders all throughout history. So what is a conspiracy, right? A conspiracy is simply a secret plan by a group to do something harmful or against the law. And that's just happened throughout patriarchy. That's been part of our history that happened. So I think we would be naive and foolish to think that there are no conspiracies. And so who's to say what is an actual conspiracy nowadays and what is just, unfounded theory or whatever. So I think until evidence comes to prove or disprove, and even that is sometimes hard to know, we just don't know. We really don't know a lot. And so I'm not espousing anything other than this practice of neither believing nor disbelieving. You know, if this stuff scares you, by all means, don't research it. But if you want to keep an open mind and ask people about it, you know, get to know a little bit about it and see what you learn. So I would just be really careful with that one, and that's why I feel it's best for all of us right now to do these practices, and the jury is out on a huge amount that we just don't know. And again, my intuition is that there's going to be more truth coming out as the old system crumbles, and it is. The old system has to crumble. So we're watching it happen, and the new paradigm's birthing. So I'll close, Deborah, just to complete with your beautiful question, to say that I feel like the most empowering thing that we can do, you know, you asked, let me see if I can go back to your question to read what you said. How do we create our own truth and reconciliation commissions in our immediate circles and in the wider world? And so we talked a lot about that on this call, but I would also say that probably the most empowering thing that we can each do is to practice everything we know to bring more love and understanding and compassion onto the planet. And I hope those things that I shared today help to do that. And remember that the most important thing is your own awakening. You know, that's the biggest help that we can give anybody, is our own awakening, because then that goes out to everybody by osmosis and by example. So thank you. Barbara, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Thank you, Brad. Yes, there's just a little piece here I'd love to put in. And, you know, whether we're looking at conspiracy theory or, you know, government position, whatever it is, if we're drawn either way, we're in a polarity. And so we need to look at how we might be giving our power away. And so I think that's a big piece of the discernment here as you're talking about freedom and sovereignty. And really the exercises that you gave, I think, are really going to be extremely enlightening for us to take a look at. And the last piece that I just got really while you were answering Deborah's question was the United States was born on rebellion and overthrowing government, the government of the UK, and there is still that rebellion that is happening. So we really need to look at, you know, that draw to either side, to giving our authority away to government or rebelling against that authority. So that just was a big piece for me. A lot of, you know, the United States birth is being revisited as Pluto does a return from the U.S. birth. So we really are having to revisit. And, you know, the irony of the Tea Party that got established, I think, like in the early 2000s, somewhere around there, which is the rebellion. And so we need to, I believe, we need to take a look at that. So those were the two pieces that I really wanted to add into Deborah's wonderful question.
Yeah, thanks, Barbara.
Yeah, plenty for us to explore here for sure. Okay, so here is a question from Jennifer L. So she says, I've had very interesting experiences during this chaotic time when everyone seems to be spinning out of control. I am happier, more focused, and elevated than ever before. It has been a very affirming time for me and has been in deep appreciation of all the deep inner work I have done for so many decades. And then she writes, and in capital letters. It feels like a faction of humanity is doing its best to hurtle us towards World War III, whilst a tiny, and then she puts in parentheses, but potent, minority is doing their best to up-level the energies, frequencies, and vibrations to maintain a stable state. I am filled with not only hope, but real knowing that the light will continue to open and expand, and I am curious what you are doing and being to maintain your vibration at this time, and how to foresee the current state of affairs and what is required to have a deeper impact and to awaken more people into their deep wisdom, to break free from the lies and propaganda being perpetrated on humanity. So love your work and appreciate your insight. Yeah.
Well, another great question. Thank you, Jennifer.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, me too. Like you, I have to say I'm feeling happier and more excited with each passing day. That is certainly my practice, and it's truth. It's how I feel because the birth is happening. And, I'm getting the sense that these are the times that we incarnated for, and we get to live our purpose now. So there's a certain sense of fulfillment that we all have as part of this soul group. And my guess is that if you're listening to this call, that you're part of this soul group, that we all came in to help to help midwife the birth, and each in our own way. We don't all have to speak in front of a group. We're doing it in our own way. But, we get to live our purpose now. We are needed. And it's the thing that we incarnated to do. So, imagine that is soul fulfillment, and the highest soul fulfillment we can live on the planet is a life of joy. So it's natural that we would be feeling joyful, and it's, I would say that that if that's not true for you, that's okay. There's no judgment about that if you're not feeling that, but it's an invitation. It's an invitation to look at maybe if you're not feeling that. What is it that's preventing you from stepping into that place where you can be part of this birthing? And look at that. And I guess, Jennifer, I would also say I'm experiencing what you are in terms of a small group holding space. When I tune in on the inner planes, it feels like there's a core group who's really holding a very powerful place of this alignment of truth and love and clarity and peace and all the higher ideals that we all stand for. It's a powerful, powerful anchor that we create when we do that. So I'm experiencing that, and the truth is there's also a very, very tiny group that, as you say, is doing its best to hurtle us towards World War III. And my understanding and my belief is that it's the wave, the massive wave, the momentum is going with us, not with them. So the fact that they're small in number means that if they're opposing this destined change for humanity, if they're opposing the force of love, it's not going to go well for them. I wouldn't want to be them, put it that way. So yes, you also mentioned hope. Yes. There's every reason for all of us to feel hopeful. I feel like, even if it's going to get turbulent, it's still just the ending of the old paradigm, and that we're getting what we've been praying for so long. So certainly reason to be hopeful. And you asked also what I'm doing to maintain my vibration, and I guess I talk about it all the time on these calls. I feel like I've shared a lot about it, but one of the things we haven't spoken a lot about on this call today is self-care. And I spoke about it in the course that I just taught in one of the sessions, the session on the archetype of the martyr, because many of us in this soul group tend towards martyrdom. We tend towards wanting to save the planet, and we'll sacrifice ourselves or sacrifice our well-being for the greater good. And we tend to, run ourselves into the ground and suffer. And that's an old pattern. And the truth is we're being invited to let go of that too. So I include myself in that. I know that that's been the pattern that I've come in to work through, because I certainly have been guilty of that. I was working way too much, driving my well-being into the ground. And that's not going to serve anybody right now. So this needs to be a win-win-win for everybody involved, including ourselves. So self-care. We need to make sure we're taking time every day. This is what I do, to either exercise or get a little sunshine or be in nature or sing or dance, whatever, stretching, whatever it is that you like to do that feeds you, you've got to do that. And that's what I do for me. And then also you ask what's required to have a deeper impact and awaken more people. And I think I just shared that with Deborah's question, but it's practicing everything we've talked about on today's call. And it's also, you can always try, when you're talking with somebody, you can always try to find a way to share with people if they seem open. You have to test the waters, to see what they're open to. But there are many ways to do it. Ask them a simple question and see if they're open to hearing more. And, plant a little seed. And if they ask you a question, then they want to know more. So then you'll know if it's somebody that you can share with or not about your understanding and your spiritual path. And so I guess, like I said with Deborah, the most important thing we can each do is wake up. The most powerful gift we can give the world is our own awakening. So I hope that helps. Barbara, is there anything that you wanted to share?
Thanks, Brad. Yes, that was beautiful. And, bringing Leslie's old teachings of grounding on the core and bringing them into new conscious awareness, I think, is really what's opening up for all of us. And what I wrote down is that we're being asked to trust more and more on our own inner wisdom, on our own inner intuition, and to be more discerning. And as, the gift for me of COVID has been to slow everything way down and find that space and time for that still small voice within us, that when we've been rushing frantically around with all our to-do lists and way out ahead of ourselves, if we even had the capability of listening, would just dismiss and continue to move forward. And so that still small voice is calling to us. And the way to that is to feel into our body. And I had a teacher tell me once that our minds might lie to us, but our bodies never will. And so when there's a question of discernment, to really just be in that stillness within the body. And this last piece that I will add is that the small group gatherings are what feed our own soul and feed each other's soul as we move through these most chaotic times. So thank you, Jennifer. That was a wonderful question. Okay.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Mm-hmm. And it's just so profound in the reiteration of your teaching today, Brad. I just am loving.
Isn't it interesting, that I had planned to talk about these things, and then the questions were very similar, so it's clearly Spirit wants us talking about this.
Yes. It just feels really wonderful to be in collective consciousness in this way with everyone.
Yes.
So,
I agree.
Yeah, so comforting. Just really feeling that in the body. Gary asks, how does one know that they have passed the dark night, through the dark night of the soul? What would one need to sail away through the dark night of the soul?
Well, thank you, Gary. So it's a great question.
Brad, forgive me. I think I read that last part of the question wrong. I left a verb out, and I think that changed the question. May I repeat it to you, please?
Yeah, please go ahead.
What would one need to do to sail away through the dark night of the soul?
Okay. So how do we know we've passed through it, and what do we need to do to sail away through it, to get away past it?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. So, many people define the dark night of the soul differently. And what is it? How do we know we're in a dark night of the soul? And, how do we know we're not just having a bad day? How do we know we're not just having a bad experience that's lasting for a while? So people answer this question differently, if you look at the different masters. I know our friend Andrew Harvey has taught courses on the dark night of the soul. And he quoted, there was a Rumi poem that he quoted, and Rumi said, "The grapes of my body can only become wine after the winemaker tramples me."
Mm.
And I love that. Because, what Rumi is saying is that I would gladly allow the trampling of the divine if I can become fine wine.
Yes.
Through the process, right? So, so I guess, one way to interpret the dark night of the soul is, and it's something that I feel, individually we can go through it, but collectively we can also go through it. And I feel we as a collective have been going through a dark night of the soul, are completing our passage through the dark night of the soul. So it's a very apropos question for the collective right now, for each of us on this call. So I thank you, Gary, for asking it. And what we're really looking at here is the understanding that the dark night of the soul is about the dissolution of the ego. It's about going through whatever process is required to experience the dissolution of the ego, the complete dissolution of the ego. And all the saints and all the masters and the enlightened masters throughout time have talked about this passage of the dissolution of the ego being essential, and then awakening to the truth of who we really are. And we're usually, when you read the stories of the masters who've gone through this, they describe their enlightenment experience very often as a visionary experience, as an experience of an awakening through all kinds of mystical processes that are difficult to describe. I know for Leslie it was the same. It was very, very hard for Leslie to describe what happened to her through her enlightenment experience. But I think the common denominator for everybody who's described this is that it is the complete dissolution of the old identity, of the old form of ego that we came in with. So, so your question is, how do we know that we passed through it? And I would say, that if you feel you have completely dissolved your old identity and you've awoken to the truth of who you really are, and you know yourself through and through as love, or are in that process of beginning to know more and more that you are love, then I would say that's the answer to your question, is that if you've had those experiences, those two things, you know that you've had that completion of that, or you're near the completion of that journey. So it's a big topic. We could actually do
Yes.
whole seminars on it. But this is just meant to be a little touching on it, and I hope that's helpful. It's really about knowing the essential self, knowing that which you truly are, which is love, which is unity consciousness, being in the witness state all the time, being with an open heart all the time, being able to live in unconditional love all the time. And I know that's the state Leslie lived in. So I was blessed to be able to experience that full time for decades. So anyway, I hope that helps, Gary. Barbara, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
The only thing I'd like to add, Brad, is the word surrender.
Mm-hmm.
As he was asking, what would one need to do to sail away through the dark night of the soul, would be to surrender to whatever is arising.
Yes.
Now, Brad, I'm noticing that we're getting close to the hour of completion, and so I'm not sure. I know you have a meditation that you're probably wanting to take us through, so... I think we should wrap it up. I think we should take 5 minutes. If we take 5 minutes for our final meditation, then we'll end on time. Yeah. Unless are there many more questions? Well, there are some more, but I think they're sort of related to all that we have been discussing, Brad. Okay. Well, let's complete for today, and I can take a look at the questions, and if there are more, we'll carry them over into next time. And I just want to close before we do our final prayer and guided meditation. I just want to tell you something very exciting that's about to happen, probably within the week, and that is we're about to launch Leslie's Returning to Oneness book in its new edition. The 3rd edition is coming out, and I can hardly believe that I'm telling you this because we've been working on it for a year or more, and it's so beautiful. And it's so powerful. It's got a new chapter and a new cover and more, and a new preface. It's, a new foreword. And anyway, it's we've given it a real special uplift. So please be on the lookout for that announcement in the email. The email will come out sometime in the next week or two. And gosh, Barbara, anything else that we need to announce before we close? I would announce that for those who attend, that we will have a Squares processing call on the 22nd of November this month. Thank you. Thank you for leading those. Yes. And thank you to the group of graduate students who attend those calls. You're doing great work. And we'll see you, our next call, I can't remember the date, sorry. It's December 6th. So we'll see you in 4 weeks on December 6th, if you would like to join us again. All right. So let's close now with our final guided meditation and prayer for the day. I invite you to close your eyes and take a few long, slow, deep breaths. Just relax. Let go of anything that might have been disconcerting or stirred up fear or stirred your mind up. Just breathe it out. Breathe in the light. Breathe in the love. That's all that really matters is the love. So just feel that love surrounding you. Feel the transmission of Shakti and healing energy coming in, filling you up with light, and love, and healing energy. Deep, deep breathing. The more we breathe, the more we relax. The more we relax, the more we can fill up with light. We forget sometimes how important the relaxation is. Relaxation
is the foundation of the enlightening of our consciousness. And so, as our year comes to a close here, let's take this opportunity to rest, relax, and unwind as much as we can. Find peace with our adversaries. Find peace in our families. Find peace as much as we can. So as you breathe this in, breathe in the light and the love and the peace that surrounds you. Let's do a little closing exercise together. Breathe in peace and love and light that surrounds you. And then breathe it out and visualize that energy going out as a stream of beautiful, golden, healing, white, golden light to whatever people you see as holding an opposite, holding a polarity to your beliefs. See a bridge being built between you as you do this exercise. Breathe in the love, the light, and the peace. Breathe out love, light, and peace towards these other people, this polarity. And see a bridge being built between you. It's made of love. Send your love. Send your compassion, your forgiveness if you can. Send your peace. Be in your witness energy. And just feel this bridge of loving connection from your heart going out to the other, to the adversary. And it's okay if you're not ready to do this. It's okay if it's too much for you or whatever. You can just send love out in general to the world. But if you do have some people that you're polarized with in this way that we've been talking about today, visualize it going to them. As you breathe in the light and send out this bridge of love, connecting you, I invite you to make an intention here. Set the intention that you would like this bridge of love to manifest in the world as a loving bond, as a loving connection, at all possible between you and these other people or this other person. To set the intention for that, and everything begins with the intention. So you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to map out how to do it. All you have to do is visualize and feel this bridge and set an intention to the guides, to Spirit, that you would like to really create a healing in your life and find more love, connection with these opponents or this one opponent. So breathing into this just a little bit longer. We're almost done. Feel the peace that comes through this exercise. Feel how peace fills the room. Peace and love. And feel the guides, feel the beings in the invisible realms who are surrounding us, supporting us, in this hero's journey that we're on. Surrounding us with so much love and support as we create bridges of peace and love in the world. This is how the change will happen. Through our own awakening of the heart, through our own awakening to love, and through the example that we lead. When we lead with this example, unconsciously we give everybody else permission to do the same. So you really don't have to do anything. Just be. Just be in love. Be the love that you are. Lead with that example. And unconsciously you give others permission to do the same. So with this we give thanks. We're deeply, deeply grateful for this time, for this opportunity, the gift of the love that we share, the field of love that we get to be immersed in during these sessions. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Spirit. Thank you, Leslie, for the transmission of Shakti. And thank you, everyone, for participating in creating this field. I love you, and I look forward to seeing you in 4 weeks. Sending you many, many blessings, all our love from here in South Africa. Peace, peace, peace. And now, when you feel ready, slowly bring your awareness back into the room and wiggle your fingers and toes. Slowly open your eyes and go out into the world and have a wonderful, joyful, loving day and put your love into action. And thank you, everybody. Until next time, bye for now.